LeBron James isn't known for writing letters to political leaders, yet he sent one to Ibrahim Traoré, and the response left everyone speechless. What's in this mysterious letter, and why does it carry such profound meaning? Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now, back to the video. LeBron James occupies a unique space in global culture, not just because he's one of the greatest basketball players of all time, but because he's turned his platform into a vehicle for greater impact. Over the years, LeBron has consistently used his voice and resources to address challenges bigger than sports. For example, his passion for education led to the creation of the I Promise School in Akron, Ohio, a public institution dedicated to at-risk youth. His commitment to racial equality inspired the More Than a Vote campaign, which aimed to fight voter suppression during the 2020 U.S. election. Beyond these actions, LeBron has spoken out against police violence and systemic racism, even when it's brought criticism. These aren't just passing engagements, they're a reflection of how he sees his role as an athlete and public figure, to be a catalyst for change. But how does this tie him to Ibrahim Traoré? Traoré, a military captain turned political leader, is the interim president of Burkina Faso. For many people around the world, this connection might seem unexpected. Burkina Faso is a West African nation that rarely dominates international headlines, except in discussions about poverty, political instability, or the ongoing fight against extremist groups in the Sahel region. Traoré rose to power in September 2022, following a military coup. At just 34 years old, he became one of the youngest heads of state globally, taking the reins in a country facing enormous challenges. His leadership style has been marked by straightforwardness and an emphasis on national sovereignty, but his rise to power has sparked different reactions, both within and outside Burkina Faso. Some see him as a unifying figure who represents hope for a generation of young Africans, while others question the implications of his military background. On the surface, LeBron James and Ibrahim Traoré might seem worlds apart. One is a multi-million-dollar brand, synonymous with the NBA and American pop culture. The other is a soldier-turned-president navigating the complexities of modern African governance. Yet, when you think about their deeper values, that gap starts to close. Both men are influential figures in their own ecosystems. Both command the attention of younger audiences who look up to them for guidance and inspiration. And both have faced criticism for challenging the status quo, though in entirely different contexts. LeBron's history of advocacy shows a consistent pattern of reaching outside his immediate world to connect with individuals and issues on a larger scale. A compelling example of this lies in his vocal support for global causes. In 2020, amid protests against police brutality in the US, LeBron also expressed solidarity with movements abroad, particularly as issues of racial injustice resonated far beyond American borders. For a man whose schedule obviously revolves around training, games, and endorsements, LeBron has managed to cultivate relationships with cultural leaders, activists, and politicians. He's not afraid to amplify voices that are lesser known, like helping raise awareness for peaceful protests in Africa, where movements like End SARS in Nigeria gained attention, partly because American influencers like him paid attention. In a similar vein, what makes Ibrahim Traoré an intriguing figure in global politics isn't just his age, though that's certainly part of it. At 34, he represents a demographic shift in African leadership, where younger leaders are stepping into spaces traditionally dominated by older politicians. Amid a broader mission to steer Burkina Faso out of both social and economic turmoil, Traoré has increasingly become a symbol for African youth striving to reshape their future. His speeches center on themes like reclaiming dignity, investing in local communities, and building alliances based on equality. These are themes that resonate far beyond Burkina Faso, because they tap into a global sense of empowerment and resistance against systemic injustice. In many ways, his rise reflects a generational pushback against external influences in Africa's affairs, and a fight to set a foundation for long-term stability. So why would LeBron James write to Ibrahim Traoré? When you look deeper, the reasons seem to align perfectly with the character of both men. LeBron's outreach reflects his belief that a leader's influence shouldn't stop at borders. He's often spoken in interviews about the importance of inspiring young people, and has repeatedly emphasized that leadership is about creating opportunities for others to succeed, whether it's opening a school or speaking out against economic inequality. Traoré's story, as a young leader stepping up in the face of adversity, fits the type of narrative that would grab LeBron's attention. It's not hard to imagine him seeing parallels between this struggle for equity and the systemic challenges he's fought back against during his career. While the exact contents of LeBron's letter are still unfolding, the motivation behind it appears clear: a shared understanding of how meaningful leadership can shape the future, especially when it uplifts younger generations. Through this connection, LeBron bridges the gap between global sports and African politics, proving once again that stepping outside the court doesn't lessen his influence. It amplifies it. And if the letter itself wasn't intriguing enough, Ibrahim Traoré's response added yet another layer of significance. It wasn't just about acknowledgement. It was emotional, personal, and profound. What LeBron said clearly hit home, and Traoré's reaction is what transformed this exchange into something that the world couldn't ignore. So, what exactly did LeBron write, and why did it resonate so deeply? Let's piece that part of the puzzle together. What could LeBron James possibly write that moved a sitting head of state to such visible emotion? For a leader like Ibrahim Traoré, whose position often demands an image of military strength and resilience, his reaction to the letter was not only surprising, it was deeply human. The sight of his eyes reportedly glistening with emotion tells us this exchange wasn't just another diplomatic gesture. It had personal weight, the kind rarely associated with communications of this nature. Yet the contents of the letter remain an enigma, leaving room to wonder what exactly LeBron wrote that carried such meaning. At first glance, the idea of an exchange between LeBron James and Ibrahim Traoré may feel improbable. LeBron, after all, is an athlete, a global celebrity embodying American success, privilege, and influence. Traoré, on the other hand, is a young African military leader navigating the delicate challenges of rebuilding a nation grappling with poverty, political tension, and security threats. Their lives are separated by geography, vastly different cultural landscapes, and entirely distinct pursuits. Yet, viewed through another lens, these differences make LeBron's outreach even more significant. His willingness to cross such boundaries to connect with someone whose world looks nothing like his own shows the universality of shared struggles, particularly in the fight against oppression and systemic inequities. The core themes of LeBron's letter likely aligned with what he consistently stands for: unity, resilience, and empowerment. Over the years, LeBron has built a reputation for crafting messages that reflect these values. Whether it's through his public statements or initiatives like the I Promise School, his focus remains clear: inspiring young people to believe in themselves and reminding them that leadership is about lifting others along the way. It's plausible that his letter extended this same philosophy to Traore, framing his young presidency as a symbol of possibility, not only for Burkina Faso, but for African youth broadly. A recognition of Traore's unique position, an individual representing a generation poised to challenge stagnation and oppression across the continent, could have resonated powerfully. LeBron's communication style tends to blend encouragement with an understanding of adversity. He speaks not only as someone advocating for change, but as someone who has felt the weight of systemic challenges as a black man in America. For example, during a 2020 interview, he described his fight against racial and social injustice as a personal duty. "I have this platform, and while I have it, I want to push for fairness, equality, and hope for future generations." Words like these give insight into what might have been in the letter. For Traore, who carries the immense responsibility of leading a country through economic hardships and social instability, receiving acknowledgement and solidarity from one of the world's most recognizable figures would hold deep significance. In many cultures, West Africa included, written words take on a symbolic meaning tied to respect, wisdom, and connection. Letters, in particular, represent more than just communication. They are deliberate, requiring intention and effort. For a leader like Traore, whose position is intertwined with the national identity of Burkina Faso, receiving a deeply personal letter from LeBron James may have felt like more than a message. It was a gift. It wasn't just the words. It was what they represented. The Atlantic may physically separate their worlds, but the letter reminded Traore, and perhaps his country, that their struggles are not unnoticed. LeBron's words bridged this gap, creating a moment of connection that transcended politics, sport, and culture. Some speculate that LeBron's letter may have included phrases that spoke directly to Traore's journey. Sentiments of solidarity in facing criticism, a nod to the responsibility of leadership, or encouragement to stay resilient. Given Traore's military background and his position as one of the youngest presidents in the world, LeBron could have acknowledged the significance of his role not just for Burkina Faso, but for an entire generation striving for change. By placing Traore's leadership within the larger context of global transformation, LeBron would have sent a message not about their differences, but about their connected missions. Traore's emotional response to the letter shows his recognition of this connection. In African leadership, where strength and resolution are often emphasized, outward displays of emotion can resonate far beyond the individual. Traore's visible reaction transformed the exchange into something even more significant. It became a moment shared not just between two men, but among their supporters. For many in Burkina Faso, Traore's public reaction added weight to LeBron's words. Reports suggest the letter sparked discussions among youth, and even inspired local events celebrating their shared commitment to hope and perseverance. The energy around the exchange suggests that LeBron's words didn't just impact Traore personally. They resonated deeply with the people he represents. What makes this exchange even more striking is the way it fits into a larger narrative about the power of connection. The letter highlighted how words can foster unity and bridge divides once considered impassable. It reminded people of the strength found in solidarity and the importance of recognizing shared struggles, no matter how different the contexts may seem. This act of writing, simple yet profound, became something far more than just an emotional moment. It became a thread tying together two vastly different stories into one collective message. And yet, this story isn't only about what LeBron wrote. It's about the effect those words had on Traore, his people, and the global audience watching. What Traore said, or didn't say, in response captured attention in a way few could have imagined. His emotion held meaning far beyond the personal, underscoring how a simple connection can ripple out to affect a much larger message of hope and defiance. Ibrahim Traoré isn't typically seen as a figure prone to showing emotion. As a military leader turned head of state, his public image projects strength, control, and resolve, traits associated with the challenging role of navigating Burkina Faso through political instability and economic struggles. Since rising to power, Traoré has become a symbol of resilience among supporters, often embodying the stoicism expected of leaders navigating the Sahel region's complex issues. In a country facing poverty, security threats, and calls for sovereignty, his calm yet firm persona provides reassurance to many. But when news broke of his emotional response to a letter from LeBron James, the reaction sparked intrigue around the globe. What was it about this letter that cut through such a steadfast public image and brought visible vulnerability? This contrast is part of what made Traoré's reaction so captivating. It wasn't simply that he showed emotion. It was the way this moment of vulnerability illuminated the human side of leadership. The world is accustomed to seeing public figures, especially military leaders, as almost guarded in their display of feelings. In some cultures, particularly in African politics, strength is equated with an unflinching demeanor. For a man whose rise to power began in a coup, and whose speeches often emphasize independence and unity, such openness was not expected. Yet, LeBron's words clearly had an impact, showing the profound effect that even the most surprising connections can have when they resonate on a deeper level. It wasn't just a fleeting reaction. This moment reverberated far beyond Burkina Faso's borders. Globally, the story of this exchange sparked widespread conversations across social media and major outlets. Publications in Africa, Europe, and the United States analyzed the implications of a letter from a globally recognized sports icon, reaching a political leader in a relatively small, landlocked West African nation. Social platforms lit up with hashtags like LeBron and Ibrahim and Global Unity, as users questioned the deeper significance of LeBron's outreach and Traoré's response. The attention was not confined to celebrity channels or sports enthusiasts. Political commentators, educators, and activists joined the discussion, dissecting what this moment represented in terms of cross-cultural dialogue. For Traoré's supporters, both inside Burkina Faso and in the broader African diaspora, the exchange brought a sense of validation. A sentiment echoed repeatedly was that this international acknowledgement meant the struggles in their country mattered, that their fight for a better future wasn't invisible. The emotional weight of this reaction also raised questions about the broader role of vulnerability in leadership. In many African traditions, written communication carries both personal and cultural symbolism, representing an act of respect and seriousness. LeBron's decision to write directly to Traoré transcended the usual transactional nature of most public figures' interactions. The letter became more than words. It embodied an effort to connect across cultural and political divides. For a leader like Traoré, in whose position communication often signals power, this gesture would not simply be dismissed as routine. Instead, it appears to have pierced the layers of responsibility and external toughness, striking a chord on a personal level. In Burkina Faso specifically, this exchange struck a unique national chord. The letter and the story around it became topics of discussion in classrooms, markets, and public gatherings. People spoke not only about the words in the letter, but about the possibilities this exchange represented. According to reports, young citizens and students in particular felt inspired by the attention their leader and their country received on a global scale. One young activist, Amadou, described his reaction as a dream of taking the message of resistance beyond Africa's borders. For a nation where hope can often be tested by ongoing challenges, this moment became a reminder of their place in a broader global conversation. Part of what fueled this broader global fascination was the intersection of sports and politics, a dynamic that has long captured attention. The influence of athletes like LeBron James goes far beyond their performance on the court, as he has shown a deep commitment to addressing social justice issues and uplifting marginalized voices around the world. His decision to write to Traoré drew attention because it highlighted these intersections. Here was one of the world's most celebrated athletes reaching out to a leader of a lesser-known but deeply resilient nation. In doing so, this exchange underlined the possibility for unexpected bridges between fields that might otherwise seem disconnected. This cultural overlap, the blending of global sports fame with African political landscapes, became an example of surprise connections with undeniable impact. Historical wounds often linger between continents, shaped by a history of colonization, economic disparity, and overlooked narratives. Yet this letter exchange became a step toward healing in its own small way. For many observers, Traoré's reaction didn't simply represent a personal moment. It became a broader symbol of unity. By bridging their vast differences, the two men demonstrated the power of words to facilitate human connection across even the largest divides. Perhaps what makes this exchange so unforgettable is how Traoré's response gave the story its emotional weight. Seeing someone in such a commanding position allow vulnerability to surface offered a lesson far beyond their individual stories. It reminded people, whether in Africa, America, or elsewhere, that leaders are human too, capable of being moved by words rooted in solidarity. Traoré's openness, paired with LeBron's deliberate outreach, showed the world the profound impact of meaningful communication. It leaves us with a broader question. In moments when genuine connection breaks through cultural, geographical, and personal barriers, what can be accomplished? Those answers continue to unfold, but this exchange has already proven one thing. Words still have the power to inspire transformation, no matter how unlikely their origin. The exchange between LeBron James and Ibrahim Traoré proves how words can bridge divides, revealing the power of genuine connection in a fragmented world. This was more than a letter. It was a message that stories, no matter how distant, can intersect and inspire. By acknowledging shared struggles, the interaction became a testament to unity, and a reminder that meaningful change starts with simple gestures. If a basketball legend and a political leader can connect across such different realities, it challenges us to consider: what barriers can we break with our own voices? What connections are waiting to be made?